majority of people are here and that we can start. So, hi everyone, my name is Valerie Mollet. I am the program manager of Funding for a Future project for WCF. Here today with me is also my colleague Isa and my colleague Velker, who can give a little wave. You guys can see them around. Thanks so much for joining us on this information session about our next calls for proposal on the Feminist Climate Action Fund, which we have a beautiful name for Seedlings. I hope you guys love it as much as we do, the Seedling name. Um, so together today, what we're going to try to get at is in the title, information. So I'll tell you a little bit more about WCF, Funding for a Future, and specifically we'll focus on the Feminist Climate Action Fund, but the second call for proposal, which is the calls for proposal that are out at the moment. Um, so just a little bit before I jump actually to the Funding for a Future. Um, for those that don't know who we are, WCF is an ecofeminist organization that works specifically on environment, gender justice, environmental justice, um, in policy, but also in grassroots community-led action. So we usually say we have like three major pillars. So think of gender justice or the gender equality SDG 5 work. And we also do a lot of work on climate, which the Funding for a Future is like one of the projects under that. We also have biodiversity, like our forest projects. Um, and our last pillar then is on toxic free. And that's where we sort of tap into chemicals, element of thing and its relation with environment also. So we're part of the Funding for a Future, which is a consortium of 6 partners, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 7. Funding for a Future is a climate justice project in essence. These are the 2 goals of the Funding for a Future, is to support civil society organization and group to deliver impactful awareness raising, campaign and advocacy, citizen engagement on like a sustainable future or climate justice. It's really to bring out this intersectionality element of climate element and specifically also to promote the gender transformative action on the policy which WCF specifically pushes through the gender lens as an intersectional approach. So the different partners that are in the Funding for a Future consortium is CAN Europe, so the Climate Action Network Europe, Climate Action Network International, Ecolis, who are more community-led action. We have GCE, which is Generation Climate Action Europe, who focus more on the youth aspect of climate advocacy, and CBM Ireland, uh, who brings a little bit of the disability element angle part of climate action also, and ourselves, WCF, as I said before. So the whole consortium aim is to bring this intersectionality in how we're responding, advocating for climate action in Europe, but also globally, as you heard that CAN International and CBM bring the global focus also to this goal. So you're probably wondering, oh yeah, there's a call of action out there. What has this Funding for a Future? What is it actually to join this community network of climate work? Is that with the Funding for a Future and the subgranting program, beyond just supporting with financial support, we also do a lot of capacity building training. So we had one of our capacity building training this year in October in Brussels, where subgrantees for the first call actually came together, and we have several different type of workshop and trainings related to like how do you communicate. So we have a range of capacity building in terms of like whether it is hands-on how do you become a spokesperson for your organization and be able to speak to media and stuff about the work that you do, but also how, as your organization, you can fundraise better and things like that. So, and we also have other trainings, which is building the capacity of your organization, of your group, to better implement inclusive practice within your policy, your structures, and things like that. So that's the training element of Funding for a Future. We have a networking support element as we're bringing subgrantees from all different walks of life, different parts of Europe and the global South, coming together, people doing so many different things together. So it's also a space of networking and finding sort of collaboration. But we also launched the campaign on the Funding for a Future that is on just transition. This year and next year, we're going to focus on housing, fairer housing, and fairer energy for all, where we're actually bringing, once again, the intersectional lens of how we're responding to climate, while also relating the cost of living that the transition can bring through housing and energy poverty, and really bringing these topics together. And so that's also a fun campaign that you'll be joining and be part of if you are selected and part of this group. So enough about the whole consortium. Now about the thing that brought everybody here, the Feminist Climate Action Fund. With the Feminist Climate Action Fund, we specifically want to support women, feminist CSOs, but also informal group. And I'll give a definition of what an informal group means in a second. Bringing that perspective of like feminism in how we both build the capacity, but also collaborate together, and also specifically how does these work that we do and this collaboration translate in how we advocate in climate dialogues, policy processes, both at the local level, national level, EU level, and international level. So that's the aim of the Feminist Climate Action Fund. We're specifically targeting a feminist approach to the climate and supporting groups to bring that specific process. So I said earlier that this is the second call. So the first call that we opened was last year around the same time. It was the calls for proposals were for bigger organizations, so CSOs, established, registered organization, and we selected 10 in the 10 countries that we work, which we'll also explain in the later stage. So this is our second call. And here with the second call, we're aiming to support more informal groups. Does that mean that if you are a legally registered organization, you cannot apply? No, it just means that as a legally registered organization, you can, of course, apply, but we're trying to very much also give space, support through funds to organization groups, specifically of young people, marginalized group, but just groups of people that come together that have an amazing idea, but never get funding because they're not registered. So here is the opportunity also for you to be able to have the possibility to actually do some action and sow some seeds within your community. And the idea is that you implement action at the intersect of gender equality and climate justice. So I sort of alluded to it in the beginning that I was going to give a definition of what informal group means. So informal groups is they don't have a legal status, but it has to be at least 3 people. So if you're on your own individually, brilliant, you have a brilliant idea and stuff. Can you apply to this fund? Unfortunately not, because you don't fall under the description of what an informal group is. But if there's 3 of you that are working together and have been working together for a while, and you have some actions that you've been doing, then yes, you can do. The only piece that we ask for in terms of how do we justify or see the structure of informal group is that the group has to sign a group representation form. So every member of the group has to sign the paper saying that we are members and we have selected this one person to be our representative. And the group also has to be, the three members have to either have an ID or a passport or a national ID to basically show that they are either they have the nationality of the country that they're applying for or the residency of the country that they are applying for. So here again, you're probably thinking, oh, what if there's four of us, three of us have it, and the fourth one doesn't? Can we apply as a group of four? You cannot, because then one of your candidates does not have the right document to prove the group. Can the three of you apply? Yes, for sure, as a group. So group representation is very important, and also I will get to the grant agreement and the declaration of honor and stuff, and I will say a little bit more about that. So I talked a lot about who can apply. Now, what are you applying for? And in terms of, and also the timing. So financially, for the seedling, we are going to give 5,000 euros. So each group will receive 5,000 euros to execute some sort of action. I'll give you a list of what those actions mean. Actually, eligible actions are right there in front of you. Raising awareness within your community, public engagement, mobilization, advocacy, activity, capacity building training. So here examples are, we are an organization that have been working at the intersection of feminism and climate, but specifically from the anti-racism perspective. We want to bring like anti-racism in. So we actually offer trainings to other groups on how does race play a part in that. Amazing. That's a capacity building training that you're offering. That's a great action. We can support that. We are a small community, a small group in rural, I don't know, Netherlands, and we've been working on an art installation to showcase the diversity of our work and basically mobilizing our local authorities to protect this area better. Great, that's an awesome activity. We can also fund that. So these are some of the examples to give you an idea of like the things that we're thinking about in terms of action. And now, who can apply in terms of location? So the Feminist Climate Action Fund is dedicated to 10 countries only in Europe. So Austria, Bulgaria, Croatia, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Poland, Romania, Spain, and Sweden. These are the 10 country eligible country for this fund. If you're outside of this country, as much as your project could be great and we would love it, unfortunately, it will not be eligible. So it has to be within these countries. And this year, we're hoping to have 5 seedlings in each of these countries. So if you do the math, 50 groups, small groups, are going to be able to get 5,000 to do some action together and stuff. And in terms of, can we mix and match? Because I feel like this question is going to come up. Can we mix and match people from Austria and Bulgaria doing something together and stuff? You can make 2 different applications and then you can find a collaboration in between. That's no problem. Mixing and match, we don't know if that's possible. We can put that in the QA specifically, but that would be slightly complicated. But having 2 different projects in the 2 countries, but that want to somehow do something together and also do it locally, amazing. That's possible. Um, so we aim to support, what do we aim to support or what are we thinking of? We want to promote intersectionality. We want marginalized voices that have left out of the conversation around climate action to be put to the front. We want thinking outside the box. You want to do a theater of the oppressed, go for it. You have other innovative ways where you want to communicate about climate action in your community, in your country, or even at the European level. Amazing, go for it. We want people to really think outside the box, come up with very impactful type of activities. And So until now, I've explained about who can apply, what sort of project you can apply, where should you be located to apply, and stuff. So there's also now the structure of how do I put it? More of like the financial background on how things can work. How do you receive money? So given the fact that we are opening the possibility for informal group who are not legal registered organization to apply, you might be wondering, okay, if we're not a legal organization, we don't have a bank account, how do we receive our money? So there's two ways you can do this. So the fiscal host way is for us the easiest. And what we mean by the fiscal host is you are a small group, but you find a legally registered organization to basically host you as a project between them, financially only. Has nothing to do with do they get to decide on my project? Do they get to be the one to report on? No, you get to do all of your work. They just accept, choose to receive the project money and make the payment for you and basically keep clear all the traces of financial record for you. The reason why we're doing this is because for financial reason and audit purpose, we need to have traces on how the money has been used. And also, with the fiscal host, it's easier because an organization that is registered as an organization, therefore falls under different tax purposes, tax structure and stuff. So it is the easiest way that we really recommend if you are an informal group applying, if you can look around, ask around in your community, if there's organization that would love to host you, that would also be great and it's the simplest way to go. However, we also know that it's not always possible to find a fiscal host. And in that case, is it still possible for the group to receive money in their bank account? Yeah, personal bank account, yes. In this case, I'm going to bring you back to the group representation form that I talked about. So let's say there's a group of 6 people. You all sign the form saying that we are a group, and you've selected that the person named the number one is going to be the representative for our informal group. They can receive money in their personal bank accounts. And that's totally okay for us to do so. However, if you receive the money in your personal bank account, you coordinate the payment of the project, you ensure that the money is used only for the projects. And the reason why this is important, again, for audit purpose, because it's possible to ask. We're not necessarily going to ask you to send it to us, but for yourself, it's going to be very important because depending on the tax system of your country, you need to have traces of how this money and how you used it is related to the project. So you keep a copy of the grant agreement, which we will sign together, the list of project payment that you've made, please keep them also together. Short note explaining the payments and all of this. This is for your tax authority. And here we have to be very clear that this is an option. However, we cannot intervene if your tax system in your country still says that you get taxed on this money. And this is why, as I said before, the first option of having a fiscal host is the easiest and the clearer one. However, this is possible. And then it is also possible that if you show these documents to your tax authority, explain that it will not be counted as a personal income coming for you, therefore not be subject to taxes. But we cannot guarantee that because taxation on the EU is completely the parameter of the national state, and it differs in each country. Um, so what do we not fund? Because we have to be clear about it from the get-go. We don't fund, you cannot use the 5,000 to buy an equipment or major purchase for your small organization or your organization in general. Because here we're funding both organizations that are legally represented and registered, or informal groups. So either way, you cannot do major purchase with this money, or take it for profit-making activities. Unfortunately, that's not possible as well. Um, Costs already funded by other EU projects. Co-funding also is a no. So if you have already another EU project and then you're looking for co-funding and you think, oh, maybe the 5,000 can the activity can also be a co-funding for the other EU project, that's not possible. We don't fund that. Activity outside of the EU, we don't fund that. It has to be within the 10 eligible countries. Fundraising activity. You're a group that you've been looking for a moment to pay or support someone or build a system for more fundraising of other activities, that's not possible. Project that benefit only one person, as I said, not possible. Project with exclusively religious purpose, not possible. And exclusively is the the key word there. If you want to link climate justice and religion, and you see that there's a point of entry there, and that's the way you will speak to people in your community, amazing. That's an intersectional way of thinking about climate justice. But if it is just for a pure, exclusive religious purpose, that's a no. Same with political campaign and political parties. General organization running costs. Again, this is more to do with registered organization than informal group. If you have an organization and you have costs for rooms and other services, and you want to use this money for that, that's not possible. It can only be used for the project purpose. So if you pay for a room for a meeting for this project, that's acceptable because it is related to the project. If you pay for a meeting for a room for a meeting that is related to other element of the organization, not possible. Debt, interest rates, exchange losses, bank fees, not possible. Bonuses, salaries, etc. And the list is not exhaustive, as I said, but these are already examples for you to know what we do not fund with this money. Timeline. So we are on the 10th of December, information session. The call opened on the 24th of November. We're hoping that the selection process will be between February and March, with starting in April onward. Um, this is the timeline, and this is also, as I see the logos of the other organization, it's a nice moment to also say there's the Feminist Climate Action Fund right now, but there's also other funds that is also open at the same time. So also look at or even disseminate also in other groups that you know about the different funds. So how do you apply and what is going to be needed in the process? We know everybody knows that applying for fund sometimes can be burdensome because you go through so many different application and forms. So we try to make it accessible, short enough for us to be able to get the right information, but also not to overburden you. Um, in this case, what we're asking is a one-pager where you tell us about your group, your organization, your activities, what you've done in the past, and what you're hoping to do with the Feminist Climate Action Fund, the Seedling Fund, and what you hope also to achieve with it. So you tell us about the action, but also what you think the action is going to, what sort of impact the action is going to make, and about yourself. And we also ask for a small budget for due diligence purpose, even though there's no financial reporting per se for Seedlings fund, but it's important for you to describe how you're going to use this money in this small budget. So tell us, how much are you going to pay for this? How is this 5,000 going to be split and used throughout the years of your project? The group representation form, which I already meant, and declaration on exclusionary criteria. This is this is just a form that will give you a little bit more details in terms of the criteria that you fit. And basically, you're telling us that, yes, I meet these criteria, and that's why I'm eligible. And then the declaration of honor, as I say in the name, it's about what you've submitted is truthful, is the right information that you have submitted. Deadline, 26th of January, 2026. Oh, gee, 26 and 26, I didn't even realize that, but this is amazing. So that's the deadline. And then from there on, those that are selected, we will give you more information about the selection process and also the details. So for selection, what we're looking at is the relevance of your project to the aim and objective of the project, the potential impact that your action is going to take, the coherence of the project design. So how do you explain your project to us? The capacity and the credibility. So your past history, and the capacity of the group to actually achieve what they say they're going to achieve, and the added value to the fund. So these are the five criteria to which the selection process will take place. So when you're writing your one pager, you're describing about yourself, think about this. How do I make it relevant to funding for the future? How can I talk about my potential impact? Because these are the elements that the selection committee will be looking at while reading your application. So, like I said already, there is a reporting. You saw it on the timeline. So the interim report, once again, with this fund, we're trying to offload some of the burdens and that can stop people from small groups, especially to feel like they can have access to doing something and money to do some fun. So a small survey will be sent instead of a large application form where you get to tell us in details many things. But there's a final report where we hope that you will be able to tell us a little bit more about what you have done in details with photos, materials, agenda, and also the seedling will be participating to other activities of Funding for the Future. So you get to include also your feedbacks on that, but also your development as part of the network. So the final report is not just about your activity specifically, although that's a big part, but it's also about your experience and your learning journey as becoming a member of the Feminist Climate Action Network and the Funding for a Future network group. There is no financial report, no supporting document and receipt that needs to be, that is officially going to be asked of you, so you don't have to submit that. But we would like you to keep it as a record for your personal self, but also for audit purpose, if audit ask for it, but we won't ask for it directly. I've been speaking a lot, and I hope all of these information were very helpful and supportive, answered already some questions, but now we're actually going to open up the possibility of Q&A. And for that, I'm going to stop my screen so I can actually see you.
Yes, so there are already some questions in the chat, and I tried to answer the first few of them. But we can refer to the ones that are still open. If you would like, maybe we can address Deanna's question first.
Yeah, Deanna, go on. For some reason, we cannot hear you.
Now?
Yes.
No, probably you hear me now. I was not able to contact from my computer. I don't know why, so I contacted through my telephone. My question wasn't, it was answered, whether the organization is still eligible for this call if it has a running project on Feminist Climate Fund at the moment.
So do you mean that you already have, do you mean that your project has, your organization already has a Feminist Climate Action Fund for the category 1?
Actually, I don't know which category is it, but it is running until May 2026. So I
May.
suppose
Okay.
it started in November and running until May 26.
Okay. Is this Feminist Climate Action Fund with under Funding for a Future?
Yes.
Okay. Because there is only one feminist. Maybe the end. Do you want to tell me the name of your organization?
Sorry. The organization is Hand in Hand, Bulgaria, and it is funded under the Climate
Yes.
Fund. Yes.
Okay. So Hand in Hand has a different fund from WCF.
Oh,
You're totally eligible. It's not a Feminist Climate Action Fund, so you can definitely apply
thank
if you
you.
want.
Thank you very much.
Hello, excuse me. I have actually the same question. I think we have also a project that's gonna be funding next year by WECF. So I'm wondering also if we can apply to this one. Hello?
Officially,
Yes.
given the fact that you haven't received a Funding for a Future fund, you can, of course, apply. However, yeah, you can definitely apply for sure.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think there was a Diane. Uh, you had your hand up. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, what I wanted to clarify is I'm from Romania, and with the insanity that is going on across the geopolitical spectrum, when it comes to countries trying to disconnect from, data sources or data whatever centers that are hosted in another country or in another continent, or for example the US. Okay, I'm going on a detour. The question that I have is this fund limited to the people involved in the project being women?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because I already have a group we are 3 people for now. The other 2 are guys. But the idea is that 2 of us have been collaborating with Greenpeace here locally. But since the EU granted, gave way to mining for rare earth materials, one of the biggest wins we had in Romania is now going down the drain because of that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Aside from the fact that there are a lot of mining and other fracking projects in the area where I live, and that I want
Yeah.
to mobilize people on. And what I'm thinking of is doing like, awareness campaigns, talking to the public, organizing conferences, workshops or whatever to. Okay, thank you.
No. That's totally fine. I just wanted to actually answer your question
Yeah.
and also clarify for everyone. We mean feminist,
Okay.
ecofeminism. If the
Yeah.
principle to which you're working from is from an ecofeminist perspective, and of course, we encourage women to be part of it, girls to be part of it, but men are also feminists. They can be feminists. So if they are and they're part of the working from that ethos and that approach,
Yeah.
that's what we mean by the feminist fund.
The thing
I'm
is,
going to take.
just wanted to say one more thing with what's happening around the world with femicides.
Yes.
Like, I believe personally that in Romania or in other countries, it would not help to distinguish, between genders. So that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you very much.
This is
And I
why
am
we're going
also
with an
looking,
intersectional approach.
I'm
Yes.
also a very, very passionate about intersectionality, intersectionalism in climate stuff and systems of oppressions and everything that's happening.
Amazing.
So
And we
thank you
look
very much.
forward. Yeah, thank you so much, Diane, and we look forward to hearing about it from in your application. I'm going to take Lucy, and then I don't know if there's any other question in the chat. Go for it, Lucy.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was wondering because it's not very clear in my head if the organization is funded for other projects by a small institutional organization for this new project, which is not funded, is it eligible? Because it's a different project, but same organization.
Yes. Are you speaking about the WCF, for example, has many different funds to support feminist organization out there. So there is different funds, different structures, so different application processes.
Yeah, which I was wondering is that we have an organization, but this organization already for other projects receives like 3,000 euros to do project, but not from WECF. It's from like French state organization. But this is for a different project.
Okay. Yes. As we said in the description, you can apply for funds for a specific project within a registered organization. If a registered organization has many different projects going on, but they can apply specifically also for a project related only to this fund. What we don't support is if you have already an existing project with another EU project within your organization, and then you apply for this to co-fund or to support that. That then is a no. But if you are going to apply for a different project, feel free to go for it. Yeah.
And I have another question because the project is working with the young people, and we are wondering because initially we were thinking of doing the activities with young men and women, and so do you think it's okay, or does it need to be absolutely only women in the groups, or what do you think? Or is it
No,
okay?
we're very open to the idea that the world should have men as feminists. So therefore, yes, they should be included in projects. Yes, no problem. Right. I don't really have access to the chat,
Okay.
but you should tell me if there's anything that still needs to be addressed.
Yes. So if I miss a question of someone, please raise it after we've gone through the chat. But the first one I see here is just to be sure, does the organization need to be linked with WECF beforehand? For instance, Gender Just Climate Solutions, or is it open to any organization? So just to clarify, I can answer this quickly. It's open to any organization or any informal group. It's an open call. I hope that answers your question. Then we have some questions more about salary. So which costs are eligible? Can we budget some salaries, remuneration for ourselves as project managers? And maybe Valerie, you can explain a little bit more.
So in terms of salaries are eligible costs. However, let's say the fund is 5,000. You cannot give 5,000 the full 5,000 to a salary. It has to also support other activities to balance out what the action and stuff has to be about, because then it becomes supporting one person and yeah, but salary in itself is eligible. So do feel free to include clearly in your small budget how you plan on dividing the funds, because we do recognize that action don't take action don't take place when there's people don't have the time to support the action to happen and stuff. So that's possible, and yeah, and I can say more about that. What we don't do is, and I think you saw it, there is voluntary stipends. That's too complicated. I would advise you to avoid if possible. But salary, specific person that is helping the action to happen, that's yeah, that's possible. I hope that answers your questions. Yeah. Is there another question?
Yes. One other easy one is, will the meeting be recorded and slides be shared afterwards with the meeting participants? So yes, the meeting is recorded and we will share it online so also other people can access the webinar. And then, will you prioritize non-formal organizations over registered organizations? So
in a way,
yeah.
In a way, yes. In a way, because the category 1 was specifically aimed and only close to registered organization. So we do want to give support to groups that are doing amazing work on the ground, but because of funding structures, sometimes find it very difficult to access fund because they're non-registered organizations. So yes, in this case, we are going to favor informal group, but that does not mean that we are not going to not support great project from registered organization. And also for the salary question, I forgot to mention that this if you are applying, in this case, if you are applying as an informal group and you want to pay a salary to a person that is going to coordinate, that person has to be a member of the group. It cannot be, we're going to pay an external consultant to support us to develop this. No, because then you're outsourcing your action and it becomes something different. So please keep that in mind if you're in a formal group, and that it has to be a member of the group that is on the form alone. Yeah.
Okay, then back to the chat. Do we need to include in the application any proof from the responsible fiscal host that they are willing to host us? So I can answer
If
that.
you already have it,
yeah.
If you have it, put it in. It makes your job easier. Remember the different criterias, right? This goes on the capacity, your capacity and your credibility. So as much information as you put is good. Is it necessary? No, because you can also then later on prove the fiscal. You can get the fiscal organization to sign paper later on also in the process. But if you do have it, I do think you should include it because it just shows that you've done more work and more structure, and it tells us a little bit more about your capacity to actually deliver this project.
Okay, so the other questions in the chat I answered while you were presenting. I see a new one popping up though. Hello, as an informal group, if our group is not chosen to receive this fund, is there any other way you could possibly support us or our project? Meaning in a non-fiscal way.
In a non-fiscal way, so as we said, there's different ways groups can get involved with funding for a future. I talked about the different structure. We have our campaign, for example. So if your activity is more related to our campaign, it's a non-fiscal, but you can still join and be supported in that way in attending. Some of the trainings and capacity building trainings that we'll be offering, some of them will be open beyond the sub-grantees and stuff. So you will be more than welcome if you sign up to our newsletter, the Funding for a Future newsletter. You should be able to receive when trainings that we're offering are open to the general public, to other organizations, CSOs, or young youth groups and stuff. You can definitely have access to non-fiscal support in that way also. Thank you, Kato. Okay. I don't know if there's other questions. But also just to say that based on some of the questions that you've posed and more that we're getting online, we will develop also a Q&A section that you can always refer to as you're writing your application. Yeah, so, and also this call will be registered, and you can always ask for more information related to this.
Yeah, there's also an email address up on the website, fundingfairfutures@wecf.org, but search it on the Call for Proposals website, where you can ask questions and we will answer them by email.
Amazing. I guess if nobody else has any other question, I guess we can finish a little early. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to reading your amazing one-pagers and working with some of you. And please keep also talking and advertising it. I know it's counterintuitive because you're thinking, oh, but there is 5 in each country. Altogether, we need about 50 applications. So also part of like the whole feminist approach is also the generosity of allowing other people to also be part of it. So please put out the message out there. Yeah, we will appreciate it. Thank you so much and see you soon. Bye now.
Bye, have a nice day.
Bye.